The ball is flying towards first slip. He's standing wide. He loves to dive around more than most players do in that situation. He believes he could stretch out further than a normal slipper will. He extends every cordon by half a body. But here, the ball is coming straight to him. And that's also what he wants. He gets right behind it and then lets it hit the soft part of his chest. Slip fielders do not do this. If you saw it for the first time, you'd assume he made a huge mistake, that he got his hands wrong and that it was about to go down. But when the ball hits his chest, the hands come in to clutch it to him. He takes the catch. Bob Simpson always took the catch, whether he was too wide at slip and he had to dive, or as Ian Chappell would say, letting the ball hit the soft part of his chest and then clutch it to his bosom. In 62 matches, Simpson took 110 catches. Steve Smith is at 1.7 a game, and that is incredible. Anything over 1.3 is brilliant. Simpson beats both those marks. He was the first slip to pace and spin, and against players with 50 tests, no one has ever taken more catches per game than him without gloves on. He almost took one per innings. The man literally caught the ball like no one else, in more ways than one. Bob Simpson had the softest hands and chest in the game. He embraced the entire sport and clutched it to his bosom. Bob Simpson could bat, bowl, and field. His leg spin wasn't always needed in the Australian team with Richie Benaud, but he was a Joe Root level wristy. You didn't really want to sleep on his bowling. His ability to catch flies and slip, and also stand wider, meant that when Australia were in the field, he was always in the game. He was like 1.5 cricketers for them. This suited his personality. It's how he saw the game. He wasn't just there to bat and forget about the rest. He was coaching himself in almost every moment, looking for 1%ers before the term even existed. For the longest time, Simpson was ordinary with the bat. Halfway through his career, he'd never made 100, which is extraordinary for a man who also almost averaged 50. Of course, when he did make a ton, he passed 300. He'd been learning, developing, and striving his entire life, and all that homework, practice, and fitness finally came out. For the rest of his career, he made a huge amount of runs. And then, at the age of 31, while still in his peak, he retired. He'd achieved all he wanted to do, and now it was time for a new challenge. With his skills in the field, he could have played even through a huge batting dip. Instead, he just left, mid-career, leaving a hole that no Australian opener has ever really filled since. A captain, a great fielder, and taking a wicket per match. Simpson was not one of Australia's greatest players, but he was one of their most irreplaceable. And his biggest talent may seem mundane. Simpson ran for his own runs and everyone else's. This was more common in Australian cricket. But while we called them runs even then, there was plenty of walking, jogging, or sashaying down the wicket. Simpson didn't care if he hit the ball or his partner did. He was running. However, it was in a partnership that he truly advanced the game. When Simpson made his maiden ton, he did so with his great friend and opening partner, Bill Lawry. They put on 201 for the first wicket, and Simpson would go on to make 311 runs. And we do mean runs. Out of 417, only 136 of them were in boundaries. Some of this was the left-right partnership, something they were obsessed about years before it was cool. And the rest was stealing singles and conning twos. Lawry would be run out for 106 in that match. These two ran like modern T20 in tests in the 1960s. They played 129 matches between them. Simpson was run out 5 times and Lawry 6. 11 seemed like a lot, so for the book, we looked into it. Openers in the 1950s and 60s were usually run out 3.5% of the time. And that's including Simpson and Lawry, who were run out 8.5% of the time. Yeah, it was a lot. The Universe boss had a single run out in 103 matches. Jeffrey Boycott had 7 in 108. Sano Gavaskar had 5 in 125. Alistair Cook 1 in 161. England's opener Herbert Sutcliffe did it once in 54, and his partner Jack Hobbs had 2 in 61. West Indian Gordon Greenidge was never run out in 108 matches. His partner Desmond Haynes 6 times in 116. This is just a random list of openers I looked at, and you can see what Simpson and Lawry did was nothing like anyone before or since. Simpson made runs by running, and then he walked away. But one of the most important things Simpson ever did was simply come back. In 1977, the Australian cricket team imploded. The players were superstars, and yet were being paid less than their friends who worked in offices and as plumbers. It didn't make sense. So when Kerry Packer came in to get cheap TV content and hang out with cricketers he'd obsessed over, most of the best players in Australia signed with him. The board was furious and picked a replacement side, but they needed a captain, someone to sell it to the public, which is kind of ironic. Bob Simpson last played for Australia before Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, January 1968. The world had completely changed, but somehow Simpson had stayed the same. To convince him, they even wheeled out Don Bradman, who'd made a post-war comeback for the good of the nation. It wasn't quite a tour of duty, but the pressure was still there. Simpson retired at 31 to get a real job, and now he was back as a near volunteer for the Australian team. Almost 10 years after playing a test, the 41-year-old returned as captain of a gutted team. When it was announced, the press actually cheered. For them, it was finally an adult in the room. The weird thing about all this is that Bob Simpson had been a professional even when he was an amateur. That was just his mindset, how he went about it. The reason he retired at 31 was that he couldn't make any money playing for his nation. He had even gone to Packer years earlier, asking him to help fund an end-of-season exhibition league so that players could make real money from their fame. Yet, now here he was, coming back to protect the terrible system he'd walked away from. Ian Chappell calls him a hypocrite, but these were very different men. Simpson wanted the players to wear blazers, tuck their shirts in, and stop sledging. Chappell wore jeans, flip-flops, and said whatever the fuck he wanted. The mustache man was a rebel, even when leading the official team. Simpson was the principal, and he was telling the kids that playtime was over. Simpson once told Chappell to shelve his hook shot. It is the riskiest stroke in cricket, one where a mistake can cost your innings or your face. Those who played are often called happy hookers, but the name is silly. This shot has no happiness, it's more in hope. Simpson was a pragmatist. Chappell was trying to make a statement. His hook was a warning. Come from my head, and you best not miss. He eventually ignored Simpson's advice and played what he wanted. Years later, when he was Australian coach, Simpson would work with Steve Waugh, a man who was part Chappell and part Simpson. Waugh took an age to make his first 100. He was a good fielder, but a better bowler. But he needed to make more runs, a similar predicament that Simpson once had. So Steve Waugh decided to cancel his hook shot and pruned his game back to the bare necessities for run scoring. He was never fully a Simpson. Parts of Chappell always remained, but he bought into his coach's style. And Simpson's influence did not stop there. His career finished, the first time, before ODI cricket or the World Cup existed. So he's a weird guy to shape white ball cricket for decades. But as the coach of the Australian team in 1987, he changed our sport forever. He did something really weird. He took the players out early to acclimatise to the Indian wickets. He also made sure his team were fit and were great in the field. Running between the wickets would be their superpower when batting, but they needed an anchor to keep wickets in hand. They would rely on batters who could bowl spin without a truly great frontline version to bank on. Their seamers were either pioneers of the slow ball or early adopters. None of this sounds weird now, because over the decades that followed, everyone copied this blueprint. Slow balls barely existed in 87. To have three seamers doing it was incredible. Stealing every run was still not how the middle overs had gone before. It was mostly knocking the ball to a sweeper and just ambling through for a single. Players had roles before, but never as clear as Jeff Marsh as an anchor, a template we still live with today. And most of all, the Australians took this seriously when many cricketers of the era still thought it was a joke. Simpson took an Australian team where their main spinner averaged 50 on Asian wickets and stole every extra run they could all tournament until stealing the trophy as well. Along the way, he invented modern white ball cricket, even if Australia actually won it with a red ball. It was Australia's first World Cup win, and they've won a few since, often using or expanding on the Simpson way. When Simpson came back as a player, the first series was at home against India. He hadn't played in almost a decade, and yet made 89 at the Gabba for his first match back. Then 176 at the Wacker, and then another 100 at the MCG. That would be magnificent for any 40-year-old, but for one who'd been pushing a pen for 10 years, it was remarkable. Australia, or what was left of them, just snuck by with the 3-2 win. Without Simpson, they lose. So his next job was heading to the West Indies. In Australia, he'd handled the skillful seamers and class spin as well, but now he had the West Indies, who may not have always had their best bowlers, but had enough to bowl very fast at this very old man. He got filleted by the West Indies, passing 50 once in 9 innings, and Australia they got thumped. But at 3-1 down, they had a sneaky chance of winning a consolation match to make the series look closer in Guyana. Australia needed the 10th wicket to win with 6.2 overs remaining. But the issue was actually the 9th wicket. The locals didn't think it was out, and the crowd threw bottles and stones, so the police said it was unsafe to proceed. The Australian Cricket Board chose him as a saviour, but his career finished without him even being allowed to walk on the ground. He started by being clapped, he ended by being booed. Simpson's legacy was almost as complicated. A great batter with a terrible start, who disappeared during his peak, and then came back when his side needed him. His batting average of 46.81 probably flatters him a little, but it also says nothing about the way he changed the sport forever. For almost 50 years, he was one of the most important people in Australian cricket, and then ultimately the world game. He was stubborn, and he believed things needed to be done professionally and had a dogmatic view of cricket. But whether it be taking slip catches, running hard for his partner, facing the West Indies in his 40s, or writing the blueprint of modern white ball cricket, he did it all with his chest. He was 1.5 man in the slips, 1.5 runs when he batted, and 1.5 cricketers for Australia. Bob Simpson changed cricket with his full chest.